We've done a number of house extensions which are kind of fiddling around in the back gardens of people's houses in Edinburgh, and of course what they're really all about is taking the back of the house and sorting it out, because in Edwardian or Victorian times you put all your posh rooms at the front, and quite often you had a maid, or maybe you thought you should have had a maid, but there was a kind of scullery at the back, and the back garden was for vegetables and drying clothes, and was not something that was seriously considered. And this is typically one of these situations where we had what's known locally as a build-out, and at Gilmore Road, where there was a roofed element like this, and this is the main house here, and this used to be the kitchen window here, which is now the dining room. And this was a kind of a loo and a boiler house and a coal house sitting on a great big plinth. And basically we semi-demolished this build-out. And I'm a kind of believer in a slightly pretentious term I coined called creative demolition, where you knock things down and kind of rearrange them in an interesting kind of ruinous way. So we knocked the stone down and we cheated a bit, because it's always, if you have a theory of course, you always have to cheat a bit. So some of the stone is rearranged up there, but most of it is demolished like this. So you start off and you make a great big thick walled ruin, which is kind of what I'm drawing now, like this. And this is going to become the kitchen of this house. And we excavated down here as well and made another room which became a kind of study underneath. I'm just going to move the corner of the house from there to there. It's kind of Isha-like moment. So there is the kind of ruin of the original build-out, with a few kind of poetic licenses up here. And that's a kind of 19th century ruinous situation. And now we can start off with some 20th century enjoyment, because what I'm going to draw here is a storyline of how a building is made. This is a steel channel which goes across like that. Underneath it is another one, which I'm drawing the back of here, like that, and that's supported on a steel strut which goes onto the corner here. On this side is another steel channel which comes out a bit further than the last one I drew, like that, and that's supported on a much bigger strut here onto that corner there. And in front of you here is another steel I-beam, universal beam, at a funny angle to the roof because of the geometries here and here. And there you've got set up the structure which is pulled apart from the enclosure, as you'll see. And on top of that we made a flat timber roof, flattish, which is covered in lead. And that comes a long way forward of the original elevation, and that cuts light off, so you need to compensate. So here we make a big roof light here, so light comes in between the old house and the new. And then you can have a lot of fun, because the roof doesn't need the walls, and so you can have fun with the walls. So here we made Canadian Western Red Cedar panels like this. Canadian Western Red Cedar is a wonderful material because it has a natural weathering quality, which means you don't have to kind of look after it or stain it or anything. And then the next thing that happens is a sliding timber and glazed door, which slides in that direction, and in this direction is a big one here which slides in that direction. And so you have a disappearing corner at this point when the two slide away. And then finally you have suspended from the whole steelwork is a suspended seat and balcony here. So you have four layers really of architecture. You have the original stonework here, then you have the Canadian Western Red Cedar panel here, which is tucked up inside the steel there, so it looks as if it might move. And then you have the timber door, which does move, and then finally you have the steelwork hanging down from the whole arrangement. None of them are lined up. All of them feel as if they're kind of on the move in relationship to each other. And so therefore all of them have this kind of kinetic freestyle composition. And that is what I like to think of as a kind of 20th century addition to a deliberately kind of ruined late 19th century build-out. And the two enjoy the juxtaposition between one sort of architecture, I believe, a kind of thin, lightweight, flying, tectonic, planar kind of composition.
These houses are Edwardian, and the Edwardians all put a lot of trouble into making the fronts really quite elegant, but the backs, presumably because there were people who worked in the kitchen, were not quite so elegant. And of course now, you know, in the 21st century, you want a different kind of feel, so that was what we wanted to do. We learned as much about being a client as perhaps Richard learned about being an architect, because we might have seen before that architects were technocrats who articulated a client's vision, and we learned that it's not like that at all, that it has to be some kind of interaction between the two.